This is The Journey, podcast edition. If what you're building didn't come with a playbook, you're in the right place.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Journey podcast edition. Today we're going to dig into a topic that quietly determines the fate of almost every young and growing company. How you hire. And, more importantly, how you think about people and how you build a team capable of going the distance. If you've been around entrepreneurship long enough, you've heard the slogan, hire fast, fire fast. It's pithy, it's punchy, it's easy to repeat, you're not going to forget it. And if you're actually trying to build a resilient business, it's a deeply flawed philosophy. So today's episode is about dismantling that slogan, examining where it came from, and offering something better. Something built for founders who aren't chasing decacorn fantasies, but instead are building camels. Companies designed to endure uncertainty, adapt to changing conditions, and survive the long haul. This is a conversation about human systems, incentives, how organizations really behave, and what happens when leaders forget that every hire is a structural change to the entire organism that it's within. Let's get into it. So there's kind of a mythology of hire fast, fire fast, and the first thing we need to do is remove the halo that surrounds this idea. Hire fast, fire fast gets repeated because it sounds decisive. It sounds like something a bold founder does, someone unafraid of big bets and quick action. But slogans don't make for good strategy. The origin story of this mantra isn't some timeless leadership principle. It comes really from Silicon Valley venture capital, where incentives are warped by the need for rapid, outsized returns. When a VC fund promises its LPs 5x returns in 5 years, the firm is effectively strapped to the nose cone of a rocket. The pressure to grow fast, aggressively, and at all costs is baked into the DNA of the whole funding ecosystem. And when you're strapped to a rocket, you don't hire like a thoughtful steward of a long-term business. You hire like someone with a countdown clock ticking behind them, a burning platform, if you will. This is where hire fast comes from. A system where money is cheap, time is scarce, and people become fuel. The flip side, fire fast, is the natural consequence of this mentality. If the hire doesn't immediately work, cut them loose, rotate the crop, replace the part, keep the rocket climbing. It's not leadership, and it's not sustainable. It's also not designed for the kind of businesses most of us actually want to build. There are some incentives behind this madness we should also talk about too. So, because they quietly drive almost every decision within high-growth companies, they're notable. In a VC-funded environment, founders are pressured to show traction immediately. Hiring becomes a symbol of momentum, not a careful organizational design decision. Mishiring doesn't feel like your money, as in you, the founder, is lost. It feels like investor money is spent, and it's not yours, so it doesn't matter. Most importantly, the whole system is geared around the idea that failure is acceptable because capital is abundant. For small business owners and owners who are scaling up without being inside that ecosystem, for the entrepreneurs who are outside the valley, customer revenue is how you're funding your business instead of institutional investment. If you're in that reality, you live in almost an entirely different universe. Your incentives require stability, predictability, cohesion. Your team isn't a collection of interchangeable parts. It's a group of people who carry institutional knowledge, who adapt with you over time, who create the culture and the identity of the organization. Incentives shape behavior. You're not playing the same game the Valley is playing, so don't borrow their tactics. Now let's talk about a concept that I'm quite partial to. Camels, not unicorns. If we're talking about animals for a minute here, unicorns get the headlines, right? They're the billion-dollar darlings. Everyone talks about them. They grow fast, they burn hot, they endlessly raise money, sometimes without creating earnings, uh, and they'll sometimes collapse under their own weight. Camel businesses are built for the real world. Camel, the animal, it can survive drought, it can handle hostile environments, it can carry heavy loads, and it can thrive where unicorns would otherwise collapse. And, I realize unicorns aren't real animals. Maybe that's another metaphor that is worth thinking about. But the point is that camels are durable. Unicorns are fast and a little bit fragile. Camel companies grow steadily instead of explosively. They prioritize resilience over spectacle. They prepare for dry seasons instead of assuming permanent abundance. And the thing to really kind of think about is that if you're trying to build this kind of a company, resilient, durable, you want to hire differently too. So if you're in a camel company, you're building something like that, you should be hiring slow, thoughtfully. You hire with an eye toward adaptability, communication, and the soft skills in people that anchor a team during turbulence. If you're building something for the long arc and not the exit slide, your hiring philosophy really should reflect that, right? Why is slow hiring actually strategic? And I think it is. Hiring slow doesn't mean hiring sluggishly. It means hiring intentionally. When you slow down the process, you can actually answer the hard questions. What's the purpose of this role, both from an organizational standpoint and an operational standpoint? What does success look like in 30, 90, and 180 days for the role and for the team? How might this role evolve as the business evolves? Because business changes now more than ever. You need to put thought into the impact of that on the person and the team to get this right. What soft skills are non-negotiable in your business environment? And how will this hire reshape the team's dynamics, decision-making, and their cultural norms? All of that will change with every hire. Think about it ahead of time. Most of the time, mishires happen because the role itself wasn't defined. The expectations weren't really well aligned, the soft skills weren't considered, and then people kind of get surprised when the wheels fall off. Slow hiring forces clarity. It forces discipline. And clarity and discipline, they beat speed every single time. Another thing I think about frequently is hiring is kind of a team sport. So if you're a founder or a leader or a hiring manager, there's kind of a hard truth that you need to come to grips with. You cannot, absolutely cannot, outsource these decisions that will shape your company's future. Hiring isn't always looked at like that, but it really is. You can't hand the process off to a recruiter or a human resources asset entirely. You can't treat it as a distraction from real work, something that you do when you have time. You can't make decisions based on vibes or desperation. Hiring without doing these things, hiring intentionally, is strategic architecture. No different from equipment or process or a leadership team or strategic advisors. It's all a part of the same success bucket. So if you're going to think of hiring as a kind of strategic architecture for you, there are some things you need when you're doing it. A hiring task force, shared accountability, multiple perspectives, clear evaluation criteria, and fair paid vocational tests or exercises that help you understand how candidates think and solve problems. When people say there just wasn't time for a careful process, what they mean is we didn't treat this as the highest leverage decision we'd make this quarter. Think about it through those terms for a second. How much does an employee cost your organization in terms of salary? Is your organization one of the many where the largest line item is salaries in your budget? If the answer is yes, then why aren't you treating hiring as a leverage decision and looking to make the highest leverage decision that you can? Your people determine your pace, your resilience, and your ceiling. They also, if they're well incentivized and aligned towards your mission, contribute to your success in a compounding way that is ... leveraged. Now, there's some ethics and economics of evaluation tests when you're going to pay for them. And really the important point to talk about here is like skills tests. If you're going to do a skills test, and I personally think that you should for most jobs, like talk is cheap, right? Get people to show you that they can actually contribute and fit and think, evaluate those skills. But if you're going to do that, you got to pay them. Pay them a fair honorarium. You know, you don't have to bring them on payroll or put them on a contract or anything, but cut them a check for the work that they produce on your behalf, period. Otherwise, it's unpaid labor, which is exploitative, unethical, and it's really corrosive to your employer brand. People talk, right? So if candidates feel that they're being hosed or taken for granted, other people will know, and those people will avoid you. The beautiful thing about this concept, though, is when you pay candidates fairly for test work, you also behave more intentionally. You become selective about who you advance to the final stages of recruitment. You become thoughtful about the kind of test that you assign, and you gain real data to evaluate candidates with very carefully. Everyone wins here. Even unsuccessful candidates walk away feeling respected, and that's good for your brand and reputation. Now, if you're smart about how you design your vocational tests or projects, it's no different than hiring an agency to do backfill work or a contractor. So you can come out ahead. It's not like you have to make this a make-believe throwaway exercise. It's not the case. Make it real work. Just pay for it. It's how you build reputation. It's how you attract top-tier talent. And it's how you create structural incentives that reinforce fairness where everybody wins. If you do what others aren't, aka pay fairly for work during the recruiting process, you will win. When does firing actually make sense? And why should it be rare? Talking about the flip side, the other end of the equation, I personally believe that firing should be a last resort, not a management strategy. Because people are assets, just not in the accounting sense. In IFRS or GAAP, salaries are liabilities, right? But the value that employees create through institutional knowledge, accumulated experience, and contextual awareness, that's not captured on the asset side of the balance sheet. If you think about it, it's pretty absurd. But it's the reality that we operate within, right? So firing should only happen when expectations are clear, support has been provided, the gap is persistent and can't be bridged, and the role just fundamentally doesn't fit. But firing is a reflex, a one-off thing when you're angry. Firing is a cultural muscle memory of some sort, or is a shortcut to doing the work. That's really how you erode trust, shred morale, and really kind of destabilize the system, the thing that you're trying to build. Next, let's talk about ownership, incentives, and long-term thinking. Here's a radical idea. What if your employees owned a part of the company? What if they benefited directly from its growth? Profit sharing and employee ownership trusts and similar models do something incredibly powerful. They align incentives. They convert workers into partners. They build loyalty and culture in ways money alone never can. A smaller piece of a stronger, growing pie is better than a big slice of a pie that collapses under its own weight. Ownership turns camels into caravans. Consider taking your people along for the ride. Wrapping up, let's do some takeaway. If you remember nothing else from this episode, please remember this. You're not building a business for your investors. You're building it for yourself. If you want to build something that endures, the incentives need to be right. Endurance requires people, not bodies, not headcount, not a revolving door of hires or cogs in the machine. People. Your hiring philosophy shapes your company's future more than almost any strategic choice that you can make. Hire slow. Fire rarely. Invest deeply and build thoughtfully. for the long game. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's it for this week. We'll see you next time.
And that's it for this episode of the Journey Podcast Edition. If you're building something from scratch or scaling something messy, make sure to follow, share, or just send this to someone else in the trenches. Until next time, keep climbing.